Welcome to the Town Hall for Chancellor Brockbank. It is my pleasure and honor to begin with our native land acknowledgement. We are honored to acknowledge that the community colleges of Spokane and our main campuses for Spokane Falls and Spokane Community College are located on the traditional and sacred homelands of the Spokane tribe. We also provide services in a region that includes the traditional and sacred homelands of the Confederated Tribes of the Colville Reservation, the Kalispel Tribe, the Coeur d'Alene Tribe, and the Nez Perce Tribe. We pay our respect to tribal elders, both past and present, as well as to all Indigenous people today. This land holds their cultural DNA, and we are honored and grateful to be here on their traditional lands. We give thanks to the legacy of the original people and their descendants, and we pledge to honor their stewardship and values. As I introduce Dr. Brockbank, on this campus, we usually try to share a little bit about what we are doing to put action to these words, rather than just to repeat the land acknowledgement. And I know that Dr. Brockbank has shared out his proposed reorganization, and we are really excited that one of the proposals that he proposed is to hire a tribal relations specialist to help us work more closely government to government. So ask him questions about that in the forum. So it is my honor to introduce Dr. Kevin Brockbank, Chancellor of CCS.
Thanks, everybody, and thanks, Dr. Messina, for the introduction. I'm going to do a very, very quick opening statement and then turn over. I know we have a lot of questions kind of lined up and then have been sent in, and so I want to get to that. That's more fun anyways. Two things. One, just a little bit of gratitude for, frankly, just working with all of you along the way. I've had a really kind of great time as a chancellor. Still been less than a year, but it is creeping up on a year fast. But it has been a lot of work, a lot of transition, a lot of changes, and I just appreciated a lot of the openness and people willing to talk to me, call, email, and those different things as we try to work through a new existence. So I just really appreciate the fact that we've got people who are invested in what we do and how we do it and are paying attention. So that's been great. And then one minor apology about this too is, my leadership style has always been, I started at a college with 23 faculty and 800 students. Right? So it was also at a time when we did memos by printing them off and putting them in everybody's mailbox. How many people have been in those places, right? About 25 years ago. So I learned how to communicate by walking around, a lot of walking around, being present and stuff. And I have not been as present physically as I had planned on being up to this point. It's just been wrapped up in other things. A little bit of travel, some legislative things, and those type of things. But it is my commitment, kind of going forward this year, to get more face time in the next winter and spring quarters. So there we go. Let's get into questions.
Thank you, Chancellor Brockbank, and for everybody who is here present and online. The idea behind the town hall is this is your opportunity to ask the Chancellor questions. We had some questions we received in advance, but at any time, if you have an idea for a question, just raise your hand if you're in the audience, and we've got runners who will come and take a microphone to you, and so you can ask your question. And for folks who are watching this online, just type your question into the chat, and we'll make sure that we ask the Chancellor that question. So I'll kick us off on some questions we've already received. So one thing that we got a number of questions about is how snow day decisions are made. And I don't know about you, but I heard that some people were puzzled when we had a snow day and then you woke up and there wasn't very much snow and you found out about it a day ahead of time. So we had a question of when and how do you decide whether or not we're going to have a snow day? And the other part of the question said it seemed a bit crazy the morning we woke up with no snow and we're told to stay home.
There wasn't no snow, there was like an inch. And the way we make those decisions are by flipping quarters and sometimes playing dice. No, actually, this is one thing that of all the decisions I make, and have to kind of make hard choices and stuff, this one kind of personally bothers me on some level, and I'll tell you why in a minute. But we really have kind of changed over the last year how we make snow decisions, and in a way I think that is really smart for us. We used to do what the school districts do, which we'd get up at 4:30, go walk your dog or whatever it is to see how bad the roads were, and then we'd get on a text string, which was mildly effective. About half the people would show up, and we're trading things back and forth and trying to make a call about whether or not we're going to cease operations or not. And I think many of us felt like that was really frantic, and planning-wise it was hard. So last year we had a really great discussion about, look, let's be proactive on this and make the decision at 4 o'clock the day before when it looks like we're about to have a weather event. And that's great for a couple reasons. Number one, you all can plan around it. When you go home that day, you need to take your laptop because you're working remotely. You know what to expect for what your part of the child care issue is, or those types of things. And so that's the good part. With all good comes some bad, which is sometimes we get it wrong, right? Because we're relying on technology. So the one day we did this year, this is super funny actually. So I get really nervous about the weather person getting it right. And so I wake up, get up, there's 1 inch of snow, and I'm just cursing, right? I'm like, it's got to snow like it's Armageddon the rest of the day to make this right. And it finally did, and it made it look okay at the end of the day, like we made the right decision. But there's a little bit of risk in the fact of trying to do it early and be proactive for you and help your personal life planning. I think a lot about parents when we're making this decision, right? So I take it to heart a lot, because I always jokingly say, well, I grew up in Montana. President Messina hates when I say this. I'm like, just buy a better shovel. Be ready for work. But the fact of the matter is I would never cancel a day if it was just about me, but we're making a decision for everybody, and it doesn't always fit everybody when we have to cancel a class, or we make you come, or, there's different ways to look at it, but we're trying to make proactive decisions based on the weather report that helps you make plans. And sometimes we'll get it wrong, and you don't need to email me, because my sister has a habit of absolutely just railing me when I get it wrong. Calls me all kinds of names that are inappropriate, but it is something that's a big deal to me to get that right, but sometimes we do, sometimes we don't.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
We also had a number of questions about safety and security on campus. And one of the questions was, it seems like crime is increasing on our campuses. Can you explain what CCS is doing to help keep us safe on our campuses?
Yeah, I think we all realize, whether you're looking at the data or you're just using your own eyes, we absolutely have 2 college campuses who look much different than they did 3 years ago. And that's really surprising. It just happened overnight with the Trent Homeless Shelter at SCC, and then the Catholic Charities housing here at SFCC. And that's really unfortunate, but it is a reality. And I'll tell you some things that we're doing, but I also want you to understand that it is constantly a high priority for us in leadership. We talk about it all the time. I know that your all college meetings at the 2 colleges, it's always a topic. I spent this morning testifying on a bill in the House in Olympia that was a bad one on that part. I spent part of the day talking to our new mayor yesterday about security at both campuses. We are constantly working on it. You just won't see all of it. Some of the tangible things we are doing it is part of the strategic plan. There is a strategic initiative underway that really is using a variety of methods to help us make a long-term plan of what do we really need for security going forward. We've added security so far. A couple of weeks ago, the board approved a $10 million infrastructure package, which will change and replace the whole camera system at both campuses, as well as electronic access controls on the doors at the college campuses. And so we are continually doing things like that. Or at Magnuson, there was a gate put in, electronic access control, safety, security. It is really pervasive, the work that we're doing. You just won't see all of it all the time. What I would say is the one thing you can do and always be a part of is, it really is see something, say something part of it. We have if leadership is trying to be proactive about what's happening, we need everybody to report what they're seeing. Even if it's something that doesn't look quite as significant as you might think, we really need to keep track of where our problem areas are. We struggle with the fact that we have campuses that were built decades ago to be open, access, welcoming, you want to be here, you want to hang out on the lawn, and now all of a sudden we've got a situation where we don't want all traffic on campus. And it's unfortunate, but it's true. And I'll say what I've said for the last few years since the Trent Homeless Shelter opened, which is we are all compassionate, empathetic people. Colleges are filled with us who are trying to help with our food bank, and we're trying to help with training out of continuing education, and like the dental assisting program at times has done low-income clinics for people, or cutting hair for homeless folks. But first and foremost for us is the safety of our students and our faculty and staff. And then we will be compassionate and empathetic after that. But that has to be first. And so you'll see us continue to invest money in infrastructure, into security, take recommendations from the strategic initiative work, and just keep pushing forward on local and statewide legislation that you may or may not see. Everybody might not see that, but we're continually working on it, and my guess is that it will be an issue for us for a significant amount of time going forward. Question, I think.
And we have a question.
Yes, regarding that topic, when considering on-campus crime data, how is the COVID gap taken into account? Can we compare new data to the recent years, or are we comparing to 2019 pre-COVID data?
Can you reread the last half of that?
Sure. Can we compare new data to recent years, or are we comparing to 2019 pre-COVID data when we're talking about the increase?
We are actually comparing. I'm going to look at Greg while we're doing this. We're 2019. We're kind of comparing back to, frankly, the way I spoke about it today with the legislature is pre-shelter at FCC and pre-housing development here. And so we're trying to compare. So it's not really a COVID issue, it's a neighborhood issue for us.
I guess just following up on your answer to that, should people be anticipating that we're going to be a locked down campus, or what kind of college atmosphere is ahead?
Yeah, that's a great question, because I had some real consternation about this when a few years ago when I was president of SCC and the homeless shelter opened, and like that just changed overnight, right? And so you have this realization that that open access format that we've created was not good. And the idea is, the first thing is like, well, let's lock all the doors. Like, man, that kind of hurts my heart a little bit, in the idea that, like, now we don't have students and community members coming into the bakery or the planetarium or walking. I mean, both college campuses have some cool stuff to walk through, and you want people around. So I had a hard time with that. And then people started telling, like, well, this college locks down, that college locks down, and like Gonzaga's locked down. Like, oh, okay. So no kidding, like 3 days later, I see President McCullough from Gonzaga, and he said, I go, do you lock your campus down? He goes, yes, we absolutely lock our campus down. And then he started laughing a little bit. He goes, but if you're dressed appropriately, any student will let you into the building. So it is locked down, but it doesn't seem to change the traffic and flow and atmosphere around. It's like I was at Gonzaga yesterday and really was able to get where I needed to go. So it is absolutely a change, but it's a necessary change. I think if you talk to security, locking those things so we don't have people going into the bathrooms to use drugs, or just frankly wandering around randomly, or spending the night in a building, which we've had happen, sneak away and then spend the night in there. So it's not what I think any of us would love or envision, but it's a necessary step. So it's a foundational step to controlling access. The other part of that that's important too is we're just talking about the homeless population and unwanted traffic, but there's also some value in the active shooter drill too, right? If security can lock down a campus from one location, that's a huge deal as well.
So I promise not all questions will be about security, but I did have one more.
Okay.
This comes from the SCC campus, and the question is, we've noticed that the parking lot near the new freeway is still unlit. ABE, Adult Basic Education, has nearly 350 students attending classes on that end of campus between 5 and 9 p.m., plus 150 more students in other buildings. Security's been working with us to monitor the parking lots at the beginning and end of classes, and facilities is giving us updates when they get them. It sounds like they're relying on DOT in Hamilton to provide power to the lights. Do you have any updates about this? Are there any other actions we can take to have this go better for security?
Yeah, so I think what's said there is accurate and reflective. I'm kind of looking at President Martin, and you can jump in if you'd like to, but part of what slows that down a little bit is the way our processes work, but also the other part of it is we haven't finished the final agreement with DOT, and if you go look under the freeway, there's drainage or stormwater drainage ponds that are not fenced in yet. We have a little bit of work to do there before we can build the infrastructure for the long term for us as well. So as everything in state government is like, oh, I just want to move this fence over here, but you have 7,000 dominoes to get it to work. So it'll take longer than we want it to, but we absolutely know that's a high priority for safety. We've always known that the freeway would be one of those things. We've been distracted by the Trent Homeless Shelter for a little while, but that's back on the radar. And I will also tell you, my conversations with Mayor Brown yesterday, she has a vested interest and focus on the idea of taking care of the north-south corridor and all the WashDOT property there as a community interest issue, not a WashDOT issue. So I think we're going to see some things from the city trying to assist with security and safety in those areas too. Did I get that right, President Martin?
Great.
Pretty close.
And we have another
I'll take it.
Another question from our online folks, and while Jeff, right before Jeff asks that, be thinking if any of you in the audience have a question, and if so, just raise your hand and we'll get right to you.
Yes, this is a question from Tutoring Services. How will locking the campus down work for areas like the library at each college, which offers guest access for computer use?
So I'm assuming they're talking about non-student access.
Right.
I think that's something you have to wrestle with. So I'm going to use my Gonzaga visit yesterday. Was fortunate enough to be part of a roundtable with Governor Inslee about the Tech Hub project that Gonzaga and we are part of, and it was in the library or building next door. So all the side doors were locked. The main door that walked past somebody was unlocked. So we have to kind of make a decision too about our libraries and decide whether or not those are really community resources or if those are student resources, and something we've talked with security about. There's some decisions to be made there along the way. So, there's one of the things about those kinds of decisions is it's not one size fits all, right? It's great that you lock all the doors on the administration building, but maybe not the library. But we can make those decisions along the way and customize them for the different places.
So when we get together for something like these town halls, we like to not use abbreviations or things that people might not understand. You just referred to the Tech Hub that we're part of. Can you do a super brief explanation of what you're talking about for folks who don't know about that?
Yes. Do you want to come up? Do you want to do it, President Martin? I'm going to let President Martin do it. She's been doing the work on it and is more.
Jeff, did you point her to the microphone? There's a microphone. There's a microphone right there.
Oh, there's a microphone right there.
There's a microphone right there.
Hi, everyone. Good to see everyone. The Tech Hub. Tech Hub is a large project based out of Eastern Washington. It's an economic development region that was designated by the federal government, and it was something that was awarded to our region, I think, this summer, and Gonzaga University is the lead participant in this work. We were connected to the work, we support the work, and it's really based around aerospace composites and manufacturing. And that's something, manufacturing in particular, is obviously really big at Spokane Community College, so it makes sense for us to be part of this work. Right now, there's another opportunity to build upon the infrastructure that will be coming out of this. And so we have an opportunity to expand what we do in manufacturing in Eastern Washington and North Idaho. So the Tech Hub is a designation of a regional effort around aerospace composites manufacturing and bringing talent and ideas and opportunity to our region. So right now, I don't have specifics other than we're there, we're ready, we want to be a good partner, a good collaborator, and Chancellor Brockbank represented us with the governor yesterday, being able to share some of the work that we've already done as a good partner. We're also working with our, sorry, I'm speaking fast. Working with North Idaho College, our partners across the state line, because they also have some interest in this aerospace composites. And some of you were around when we had the Air Washington project several years ago, decade ago maybe. Gosh, I've been here a long time. But that project included aerospace composites manufacturing across both state lines, and we were part of that project with North Idaho College. So it was a good chance for us to reignite some of our relationships with our friends across the border on how we can best serve our region. We both need to be doing this work together because neither of us have capacity on our own to serve the need. So it's a twofold project of attracting talent and innovation and ideas into our region. Then we have to have the workforce pipeline, and that's where we're situated and ready to go to support the work. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. Lots of partners. Everyone wants to be a part of it. It's kind of high profile, but we're a big partner because of the work that we already do.
Thank you, President Martin. See what happens when you just make a brief mention of something? Yeah, she gets applause. Your answers didn't get any applause.
No,
I just
know.
want to point that out to you.
We got the right people in the audience.
Yeah. Totally switching gears.
Okay.
So you've been sending out emails and talking about a planned reorganization of the executive staff. Question is, why are you reorganizing the executive staff right now? Don't we have enough disruptions already?
Yes, we do. Yeah, we do, and this is actually an opportunity for us. As I've said numerous times, the real prompt or the real trigger for the full kind of reorganization is the fact that Greg Stevens announced his retirement back this fall, that he'll be retiring September 6th. And if you're familiar with Greg's work and history here, Greg has quite a portfolio of work that nobody else in the country has the exact same portfolio, which means we can't rehire for Greg's job. You know, over 25 years, his skill sets, he's collected security and HR, strategic planning, just a whole bunch of things. So it was when he announced that and gave us a year to plan, it allowed us to really look at where people were at, what our structure was doing, how do we best plan for the demands ahead. And so it's actually kind of a great opportunity for us to look at it in a way that doesn't have to be rushed. And so actually I'm super excited about it. President Messina mentioned one part of it after the native land acknowledgement, which is the addition of a tribal relations officer. There also will be the addition of a vice president of workforce development. So basically we can take back our role as the premier workforce development entity in this region. But there's other things in there where we are shifting some of our existing officers and executive leadership around. I'll have a full email and explanation of all those things tomorrow, but I think probably the biggest component of that is the idea that we will hire a chief officer of human resources, chief human resources officer, switched up those words, in order to really build some capacity in HR and advocacy for the role that's happening there. I think we all realize that HR holds a lot of different roles. It's compliance, it's recruitment, it is training, and a variety of other things, investigations, all in all. And they're full, like they're just really full. And part of the reorganization was the idea that, like, hey, how can we do this without costing us any money? Just like cost neutral, shift all the pieces around, make it right. And when I really looked at that end part of it during the feedback loop, like, you know, we have to recognize we have 2,000 people working here. We hire a lot of people each month. That's a really critical piece, and I don't want to make it a subset of somebody's job. The fact that Greg could handle it with a whole bunch of other things is one thing. But going forward and for the future of what we do and how we want to build that office and how we need to use it to keep our people here, to recruit quality people, is going to require some attention. And so that changes the cost neutral approach, which you'll see tomorrow. But I'm super happy about it and super proud about it and excited about what it will do for us going forward. And I think it really kind of paints a great picture. And I really appreciate the fact that Greg gave us time to look at it in a way that opened up almost a 2-month feedback loop that you were all available to provide him contributions to, which absolutely changed the final product. He's going to have time to help offload and train and mentor people along the way. I bet he could have done it a few weeks early, so his last few weeks are not super hard. But His information and historical knowledge is something that we really value. And so I'm really happy with the way it's worked out. It is stressful. There's a lot of disruption and a lot of things on our plate at one time, but it's just kind of the circumstances that cause that.
So how will people know about the timing of all the changes?
So tomorrow, everybody will get an email in the morning that has a general description of what's happening. In that will be a link to the intranet site where we will have all the documentation that we've asked Samantha Shelton to help Greg with, which is project management of it. Here's the Gantt chart of when things happen. Here's existing job descriptions. Here's the PowerPoint I'm going to use at the Board of Trustees meeting in February. It's similar to what we're doing with the rebranding campaign, which we're saying, here's all the documents we have. If you want to dig into the minutia, it's there for you. If you want to ask questions, it's there for you. We don't want this to look like we're, doing something behind the curtains that's not that's not out there and transparent. And so we really want to share all that stuff with you. It'll be available tomorrow. And also, after that, the feedback loop stays open, right? I want to hear if stuff's not working, and we will always make adjustments if we don't get something right. I guarantee you, in the model that is shown tomorrow, somewhere in there is something that in a year from now we'll say, maybe that wasn't perfect. But that's how you have to kind of work through those issues.
Great, thank you. I'm just looking out to the audience to see if there's anyone who wants to ask the Chancellor a question. Okay, if you change your mind, just raise your hand. So you mentioned branding, rebranding. Why are you rebranding Community Colleges of Spokane?
Well, I am not rebranding the Community Colleges of Spokane. It's an important clarification, actually. The rebranding project is part of the strategic plan and was written in there through the strategic plan development, and that plan belongs to the Board of Trustees. And this was one project that they specifically said, we want that to be ours. So although all of us have been doing some work on the rebranding project, surveys, focus groups, contributions to that, and Carolyn, you've done a lot with sharing information and updates and timelines. At the end of the day, the decision about what recommendation and what direction we take with the rebranding project will be discussed, voted on, and approved by the Board of Trustees. Now, we're all, like I said, we're all really deeply engaged in it. There's a executive work group, which is myself, the two presidents, Carolyn, and two trustees, Trustee Woodard and Trustee Johnson, who are working with Drake Cooper to look at what their recommendations are and what we agree with and don't agree with there. And that is really challenging work. But I'm excited about it and nervous all at the same time. If things work out and we can hold to the timeline, on February 20th, a recommendation will go to the Board of Trustees and they'll make a final decision about what's this going to look like. But I want to acknowledge this part of it too. I think we all know that this is an exercise that can be a little bit emotional for us as we go into this. What we know is that how we represent CCS in the community and SCC and SFCC will not look the same. One of the things that came out of all the survey information was what we do right now, the way we do it, is confusing and lacks clarity, right? So the one option that's not on the table is let's just keep doing what we're doing. That's not going to work. The other options, and was part of the project, was do we represent ourselves as one brand or two brands, or how do we project what we want there? And that's really challenging because no matter what option is chosen, somebody's not going to be happy or is going to be in disagreement. So in my career, there's been a couple times when I've gone through some transitions similar to or parallel to this, and oftentimes what causes the most consternation is association to a name or a place, because we spend a bunch of time saying, this is the place I belong. I have a lot of pride in what I do at SCC. I have a lot of pride in what I do at SFCC. And if any of that gets threatened or changed, you have to understand that that is meaningful to people who have been here a long time. And no matter what direction we go, everybody's going to have some feelings about that. So that makes our decision and our work with the trustees to kind of help them come to a recommendation really, really hard. And so whatever ends up being, I want you to understand that you have people who are gnashing their teeth, a little stressed out, worried, and trying to do the right thing for everybody but there is not one decision that will fit everyone. So, I mean, fingers crossed, and looking forward to what happens there. It's a really important project that's going to shape what we look like in this community for a long time to come. And so, a lot of work to do this month.
So I know it's the Chancellor's Town Hall and not Carolyn's Town Hall, but if I can do a brief commercial interruption. For folks who do want to learn more about the branding project, just like the reorganization, there's a section on the intranet, and that's where all of the branding companies' presentations and all of their research information is there. And as things become available, we're opening them up for everybody to get a chance to look at them. And so when you see On the Inside on Monday, you'll have a link again to that page to some of the more recent things that Drake Cooper has completed for us. Now you can have your town hall back. I just had to do that, sorry. So a short time ago, you were talking about the hard work of HR and all the different people they're hiring every year. If you were to be able to make sure every potential candidate to work at CCS was asked one question in their job interview, what do you think would be the most important question to ask them?
I think that's easy, and it's an easy way to answer a lot of questions here is what's your investment in student success, right? Because if you really look at everything we do, we just talked about security and buildings and legislation and rebranding and all that stuff. Like, at the end of the day, if you really peel it all back, the product, and I said this during the Chancellor search as well, the product that we do and the reason that we're all here is for the transfer of knowledge from faculty to student in the learning environment. And whether the learning environment is on campus or in one of our classrooms or in the field or whatever, think about it. Your job is to help make that happen. Faculty do it right in there. They're right in there. But they don't do it if we don't pay them. We don't plow the parking lots. I see Melody punching Scott Sataki to kind of tell him, yeah, tune into this part, Scott. But if you really boil it down, it's about student success in every single way. If you don't plow the parking lot, students aren't going to make it. If you don't help them with federal financial aid, they're not going to make it into the classroom. So it's about, tell me about your investment in student success. There's a secondary one, which is going to lead you to ask me a follow-up question. But
Are you going to do an abbreviation?
no, I'm not.
Okay.
But I also wish that we had a unified kind of written culture code that we could say to a candidate, this is our culture here, this is how we show up for work every day, these are the kind of expectations to be part of the team, this is how we identify, and this is what you could expect if you come to work here. And then that person could choose whether they're a culture fit for our institution, instead of a committee going, well, I don't know, Bill looks like a better culture fit than Sam does. Like, let them make the choice for you. Those are the two things I wish we could save. And I think we can work towards some of that for sure.
So you just mentioned culture and culture fit, and for a lot of people, words like that want to get unpacked a little bit so that they know what you're meaning by that. It's not, I'm guessing it's not that you want everybody to hire people who are just like you or just like me. What do you, when you're, no, you would?
No.
No, okay.
No.
So,
We'd be in terrible shape.
right. So unpack that a little bit, what you mean by you're saying, like, let's tell them about our culture. How would we even be able to identify our culture?
Yeah, so I do use the word culture a lot. I think if you think back to Convocation, I talked a lot about, I think I used 9 promises. Those were all culture-driven statements. You know, everybody is going to adhere to the concept of mutual respect. You know, we promise that we'll do this, we promise that we'll do that. Culture is, in my opinion, the most powerful thing in an organization or a place of work to help you get work done and help to be an effective institution. And so we have culture here, but it's not written down. What would be the ideal vision for me is if I walked up to Jeff and said, what's our culture here? And he said the exact same thing that Lori did. Exactly. If we did that right now, if you went to SFCC, I bet you would get a similar kind of word dump of these are the things that identify our culture. You'd probably get a little bit different thing at SCC. You'd probably get a little bit different thing at some of the district offices. It'd be generally the same, but it would not be clear. But when you have a clear vision of culture at an institution or a place of work, it's pretty awesome. I was not going to tell this story, but I got time, so I'm going to tell. This is my experience that sold me on that. So when I was a college student, I started a job as a whitewater raft guide in Glacier Park. Like, went up there. The first summer I worked, it rained, I don't know, like 90 days in a row. It was pretty miserable. And the way the guides worked together was shoving matches, a few fist fights, and we threw stuff at each other a lot. Like, it was kind of a rough place to work. Because we didn't really have a culture at all there of anything other than, if you're late for work, I'm going to steal your trip. We used to do this too. These are funny now that we're 52 years old, but you look back, like if a colleague wasn't doing their job, we would steal their stuff. Like, not great culture, right? But the next year, our head guide made a manual and created this Teams system. And it 100% changed the culture of that organization. It created the funnest times of my life. So we'd be like, instead of fist fights, I had a team of 6, and we would do stuff for each other. So here's a classic example is, on one of these trips, you'd have a dinner trip. So some of us would get to go and just finish. Some guides would stop on the side of the river and make dinner for their clients. Well, the guides who were on the short trip would get done, go down, throw others, and go to the bar, right? So we're hanging out, drinking beers, and you watch a clock. You're like, hey, they're just about done. We go jump in the truck, go pick up the stuff from the dinner site. While they're floating down, we go clean up all their dishes and put all their stuff away. Now, the dinner guides would get paid extra money for having the dinner float because they had to do cleanup and extra stuff, and they'd be there late. But our team would show up, all their stuff would be done, and then we'd all go to the bar together, right? That was awesome. We had the same expectation of how you show up for work, the same expectation of what it means to be on your team. Like, you're going to be there. We had the same expectations for safety. We had this system of how we treated customers. It was super incredible. I want that for everybody here, right? If you're nice to each other all the time, it makes your job easier. If we're all working towards the same thing, it makes your job easier. I think culture is the most powerful thing you can have. And you'll see in the reorganization that I've made a commitment to that with an office that uses some existing talented people, Grace Leaf and Jim Moore, to kind of try to carry that forward for us. So it's going to be a big commitment for me this year to try to do something special for our district in the area of culture so that your work is more enjoyable. We talked a lot about employee retention at the beginning of the year. That's part of it. So it is a hard topic to wrap your head around. The word culture can mean a million different things. But my example is how I feel about it. That's what I'm shooting for.
Great, thanks. And I hear we got someone from the online questions.
Yes, on the topic of culture, wouldn't we want to also look at people who challenge the culture in a positive way to affect change, not just those who fit in? How does the culture affect search advocacy and equitability?
So, yeah, I don't think that was one of the comments that came out of the convocation speech when I kind of really doubled down on the mutual respect thing. And I heard back from somebody, not directly from the people who said it, but like, does that mean that we can't question what's going on? Like, absolutely not. Like, the idea of the culture we want is one of an open feedback loop. You know, we'll go to the reorganization thing. One of the disappointing things about the reorg process that we put together was I gave about 60 days for anybody to come talk to me about whatever your thoughts were about the proposed version 1. And it got a lot of people who did it. But I heard a lot of behind the, kind of through the grapevine, I'll call it, comments of, does Kevin really want feedback? Like, yeah. If I didn't, it'd already be done. Right? Like, when I say that I want feedback and I'm asking for your contributions, I genuinely mean it. So that culture part, yeah, you absolutely, there's nothing about saying, like, we all understand what the rules are to show up for work. None of them will ever say you don't have the ability to provide constructive criticism, to critique things, to question things. I always say, like, if I jokingly said, no, I don't want everybody to be like me. If I'm the smartest person in this district, we're in super big trouble. Right? Like, there is tons of smart people here. You got 2,000 people. we got to take the collective good of everybody to figure out the best way forward. And that's why we survey people. When we survey, we read that stuff. When we do focus groups, we listen to those things. And I think sometimes there's this unfortunate reality that there's not trust that we actually look at that at a leadership level. And that is absolutely not true. And I definitely can vouch for myself and the people who are in the room right now, it's not true. So take that to heart. Culture-wise, we're committed to feedback. We're committed to trying to do the right thing collectively. That doesn't mean you always get your way. Doesn't mean I always get my way. But we have to use the overall power of all of us thinking together about what the right way forward is. Did I answer all that question, Jeff? Okay.
Okay, we have a very shy audience that doesn't want to ask you any questions.
I'll tell more stories.
I'm shocked. So when you were talking, oh, did we have someone back there? Yes, Erin. Erin's going to make her way to you. She'll meet you. Thanks.
Hi, Kevin. Thanks for the push for career technical programs to reiterate that for CCS. But here at SSCC, we have 80 plus programs. And so how is your approach to how you're going to support all of those programs, including, the education, social sciences, humanities, the arts, the programs that may have less highlight and less career path of that shows really well on TV, but are really, to the point of our students, more than half of our students are in those programs. So how would you address to that?
So can I clarify? Don't give the mic back yet, because I'm not sure. I want to make sure I understand the question before I answer it. But I think what you're saying is how do we highlight and promote like a AA transfer degree that really there's no flashy equipment that goes along with it very often? Is that where we're going with that?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think it's part of being a comprehensive community college, right? Like every comprehensive community college in the country, and there's nearly 1,200 of them, balance this message of workforce and transfer, as well as ABE, ESL, and some of those major components. We have a ton of things too, including apprenticeship and corrections and Head Start. And so what we want to do, I think this is one place where we as a region and a city have to get better too, which is there is a lot of narrative in our community about the idea that you don't need to go to college. Like somehow the idea of your high school credential is going to build you a career and a lifetime of healthcare and stuff is what's being pushed in certain regions. And I think we all realize that's not true. You need a post-secondary credential. And whether you do that in a technical training area and go to hearing instrumentation, or you're in you're a physical therapy assistant, it doesn't really matter or you're going to move on to Eastern in one of 1,000 different places. We have to push the idea that post-secondary credential, regardless of the pathway, is necessary. And then that's where it falls back on the good work that's happening at the college level, where you come, I come to SFCC, I don't really know what I'm into. I have pathways, I got pathway specialists who help guide me into what I'm doing, even if I don't know. And I think people who work with students enough know the large majority of our students don't truly know what they want to do or what they need to do. They are lightly educated into the idea that this is a good place to go. But we need to work on it, and I think our branding, marketing going forward has to push the idea you need a post-secondary credential to build a career where you have retirements, healthcare, longevity, housing, all those different things. There's a great fact, and I'm going to butcher it a little bit because I can't remember exactly, but it comes from Launch Northwest and Ben Small, where he said their data shows that if you are a high school graduate in Spokane, after 4 years of no additional training, your average income is $32,000. Somebody tell me that that's better than a post-secondary credential. It's not. So we need to push that. And so whether a student walks into us and says, I'm taking the transfer option with potentially doing something at Eastern or a technical program, we need to help them find the right path. I really don't care what program a student takes. I want them to be successful, and I hope that's how everybody feels. Did I answer your question clearly? If not, I'll add on to it.
And Aaron, we've got someone right in the middle here.
Okay, I'm a little bit nervous, so I'm going to try my
Me
best.
too, don't worry about it.
Okay, cool. My name is Sarah. I work in admissions and registration here. Hello, we've met.
Yes, we have. Hi, Sarah.
So I submitted my question ahead of time, but I'm just going to ask it anyway because I made it today. My question was sparked after I reviewed the slides from the rebranding project that you shared with everyone. There were a bunch of great things in the rebranding project, the research that they did, that was so positive. But of course, what really stood out to me was the negative comments about the SFCC staff that was gathered from the customer research. So there were a lot of comments like, the employees are hard to access. I had long wait times to get a reply. Everyone is inaccessible, difficult to navigate systems. And as an SFCC staff member, I immediately recognized that as being some of the consequences of having high employee turnover. And obviously, the Spokane community is feeling the effects of our poor employee retention. I have been here a year, and I have seen many of my coworkers come and go in that short amount of time. So I was wondering what steps you're taking here at SFCC to improve the employee retention. And I know you mentioned culture already, so I guess my question more specifically is, what else?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I did see that yesterday, Sarah, so I had a chance to look at it a little bit before. So here's what I would say. There's a couple things I want to kind of mention here. Number one is Sarah's referenced, and we referenced the survey from the Drake Cooper company on the rebranding stuff. If you've not read that, go read it. Even if you don't care about it from rebranding, like, it's really interesting about what people think of us, how they view us, positives, negatives, different things. It's just really interesting stuff. So take time to do that. The second part I would say is the comments about, I can't remember the specific language that was used, but I think you take that with a grain of salt sometimes. One of the great exercises you get as a faculty member, if you're a faculty member for a long time, is anonymous critiques in a course eval, right? And you learn how to take those things and say, well, that makes me mad, but it's probably true sometimes. In this case, what I would say is, yeah, there were some comments there, but if you look at what SFCC is doing and has been doing numerous years leading up to this, is there's a focus on continuous improvement through the guided pathways work, down to how do we write communications in a better way. You're constantly working towards being better. It's important to pay attention to what they say in a survey like that. And I know that's happening with President Messina and the leadership team here and those of you on the front lines. So I think you want to take pride in the work that you've done that's shown continuous improvement, and not get too wrapped up in a specific comment. The other part of it too is the employee retention part. So I talked a little bit about the role of HR. So there's a recruiting and onboarding role there. There's been some improvements made since our summer leadership retreat with administrators and exempt employees. Many people have put some effort into that. It makes it just a little bit more fun and a little bit more sense of belonging in the beginning. But once again, I'll give some credit to Spokane Falls here of putting together a really great, consistent, robust, new employee training orientation. It's an employee orientation program that's been explained a couple times to the Board of Trustees, and that's apparently been very well received. So those kinds of things that create a sense of belonging, whether it's you just got hired and we're giving you a packet of SCC, SFCC swag, so you feel welcome, or you're in an active orientation program here with your college, with Francisco and the gang, those are the kinds of things that are going to help. And then there's some other things that we talked about this summer that are still on the table, and there's two of them. One of them is the idea that administrators in exempt and classified would have the option for a sabbatical that looked similar to, but probably not quite as big as faculty have the option to take as well. And then the idea of having daycare available for some of our lower paid employees is still on the table as well. Not completed, a lot of work to do, but we just got to keep kind of chipping away at those different things and find out that people find this the preferred place to be, and when they get here, they feel like they don't ever want to leave. It's a great question. Thank you for bringing that up again.
So you've been in the chancellor role for about 8 months now. What are the things, if any, you miss from being a president to being a chancellor? What's the difference?
There's a huge difference, actually. It's the same thing I miss from being a faculty member, honestly, is just, although I love my career pathway, it just gets further and further away from the actual teaching and learning environment. And there's a sacrifice and reward for doing that. But I think even when I was president, if on a bad day, the way to resolve that is you go for a walk through the building and you get to see faculty and staff and students. Like that's why we're here. And if you don't relate to that and that doesn't kind of connect you, that makes this a harder place to work. But if you do connect to it, it makes it a great place. And so where we sit, district administrative services, this is a problem, and I'll talk about why in a second again. There's no students there. And so I miss actually just the physical location of being on a campus, the connection to students and the people who are doing frontline work is a bummer to me, honestly. And I talked earlier about my regrets about not having as much time on the campuses as I had kind of hoped. I'm going to change that going forward, but you get busy and you're 20 minutes away from those places, it's hard to make that move. So anyways, so those of us that sit at RP1, I've talked about this probably in convocation and early on. I made the decision early on that we're going to move out of that building downtown. And we're going to move out of that building for two reasons. One is we have space across our district that we own. We should not be paying lease money to stay when we have space available somewhere else. So we're going to save some money. And the second part of it is go back to Sarah's retention issue, which is district employees who work at RP1 who never get to see our mission at work don't ever get the real joy of working here. So I always say, hey, if we're a mission-driven institution and we have some employees who can't see our mission every day, then we're liars, right? And so it's once again, when we talked about putting lights in the parking lot, like multiply that by 10 and moving out of a building and getting things fixed up and ready to go takes longer and takes all those things to happen. But I'm committed to doing it for the simple fact of what I miss is being on a college campus, period. So, question.
I thought it was going to be the bakery and the baked goods.
I do miss the bakery. However, Anna, who's new in the marketing department, can smash it with cookies, like awesome.
And we've got a question from online.
Question.
Oh, sorry, we got a question back here first. We're going to get you a microphone so that it records. That's okay. You don't have to want to. We just have to do it.
People online can't hear your question, so.
So this is just to kind of piggyback off of what you said. So you, from my understanding, I came in right before COVID. The whole world I don't think I've seen this campus normal, like ever. So you came from SCC, right? Is that where you were president?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm an SFCC faculty instructor in the OTA program. And I would love to have you come down and see not just the OTA program, but what the PTA program is doing. Like, I think our students have been off doing some community service-based stuff that's really serving back and giving back to our community, just as a way to get you connecting with our students in addition. So it's tying back to that, because we're just doing some really cool things, and it's just really, I want you to see what they're doing, because it's really cool.
If you invite me, I promise you I will come. So Brianne Riley is my executive assistant, and she's right up front there.
What are you doing Thursday? Just kidding.
All right, hold on, Brianne.
Next Thursday.
It's actually, I really appreciate invites to certain things, and whether it's even like capstone presentations at the end of the quarter or just like this is what we're doing is great. President Messina and I were talking about the other day is I can walk around campuses, but it's largely ineffective because just like, oh, I'm going to accidentally run into Joanne because she's in the hallway. Well, that's not as effective as some dedicated time and being there and having an audience to show me exactly what you do. And so I'd really appreciate those intentional visits and those scheduled visits that I know I have to make time for, and that also is a good use of both of our times. Otherwise, like I said, it's just I try to get lucky that I run into the right people, and that's sometimes works, sometimes doesn't. So yeah, I'll come. Promise. You bet.
Great, and we've got an online question.
This actually went back to a comment about being accommodating, which was, I think, a comment you made before this, Chancellor. How is CCS moving forward with being accessible for new students who are neurodiverse navigating the application systems and first steps?
Wow, that's a great question. And a really hard topic that I don't think most people are experts in a way that helps us operate. So actually, our exempt and administrators group on next Friday is going to have a presentation on neurodiversity, and we're going to start talking about what that means. So that is a topic that is absolutely going to happen, but when and where it happens is kind of a little bit up for debate. I think it's a different way to look at an old problem and acknowledge that many of our students, especially our young adults coming out of COVID, are suffering from some neurodiversity that is, frankly, makes it hard for them to be successful.
Great, thank you.
And actually, I think there was a follow-up question to the transfer promotion. I can't quite see that far, but did I not finish the question?
Other than marketing, on a district level, how would you then be supporting those other programs that don't get the highlight, like career tech programs, like in the humanities, social sciences, fine arts?
Yeah. So the way I would answer that is, one of the things that's in the reorg is this concept of we need a person dedicated and focused to be our external workforce representative. And that's I'm not going to spend all the time to explain that. But in the same sense, in the same breath, one of the conversations that I had with the two presidents when we talked about this vice president of workforce was, okay, then if this works and this dual reporting line works and these things happen, like what do we do from a university transfer center place? How do we raise the awareness and focus with our university partners and those pathways on the students and the quality of our students coming out of this place? So from firsthand experience, I get to see my son, who took classes as a Running Start student at CCS, go to, the first place he went was Carroll College, and the first thing he did that week was call home and complain about the quality of syllabi. So that tells me a lot of stuff about our students, and we all know our students are more successful than students who actually start at the four-year institutions. So we need to build awareness with our partners. And here's the other part we need to do, is we need to leverage those partners. They desperately want our transfer students and our students who are interested in being in a sociology program or an anthropology program or any of these things. They're our clientele and they're our target for those students. We have to make them come to us and give a value proposition for our students to go to them. Gonzaga, Eastern, WSU, all count on us. And so we have leverage with them. So how that unfolds, I think, is one of the things we'll be working on going forward, too.
So we're just coming up to the top of the hour. Are there any last thoughts you would like to leave us with?
I think we covered a lot of ground today, which is a pretty fair representation of what's happening across our district right now. I know our executive leadership team is worn out. I've thrown a lot of stuff at them. Some of it's, based on just timing opportunistically, and some of it's the result of an overzealous new chancellor who wants to change everything into the, perfect format going forward. Trying to respect that at the same time we all have regular jobs to do has been a challenge. But I really respect the fact that we have great people here across the board. Like, I just love the fact of some of the people that work here are just some of my favorite folks. And we get new people like that all the time. I'm going to reference Anna's cookies again from yesterday. It's because she's looking right at me. But I love having the opportunity to come visit programs, run into people in the hall, and so I want more of that as we go forward. My goal is to be more present. My goal was to be present in the beginning. I don't think you can ever have too much of that. And so I'm really looking forward to the remainder of the year. And I also want to tell you, as hard as this year has been for some people who I'm working with as far as getting things done and making some changes, we are setting ourselves up for an incredible year next year. Promise.
Great. Before people give you a hand, and thank you for coming to the town hall, I just want to encourage people, if asking questions in a great big group is not exactly inside your field of safety, come on down when the camera's off and you can still ask the Chancellor a question. So please join me in thanking Chancellor Brockbank.